The passing of David Crosby serves as one more sobering reminder that we're at a point in time where we're going to quickly lose access to living legends, foundational musicians or contributors to modern rock. And as we go along, I think it's important that we keep some things in their proper context. Over the past couple of days, I've seen really two types of posts being published. There are those that celebrate the music of David Crosby, and then there are posts that are almost trying to diminish or erase his contribution by focusing on comments made by former bandmates that he was a difficult person to work with.
He tore the heart out of CSN and CSNY in the space of a few months.
Because of his criticism?
Because he's not a really great person.
When an artist dies, we have a choice. We can either idolize them or demonize them, celebrate their work or essentially cancel them. And a good friend of mine would always say that no matter how thin, a pancake always has two sides, which is just another way of saying that there's always more to the story. And we as fans, I've talked about this at length, music attaches itself to our life experiences and our memories, and by that way gains access to our emotions. And that we want to believe that these musicians that are accessing our emotions are worthy of that honor, that they're good people. And the truth is probably a lot less idealistic than that. In fact, one of Joni Mitchell's early songs was actually written about the infidelity of David Crosby.
You were betting on some lover, you were shaking up the dice, and I thought I saw you cheating once or twice.
So when I reflect on David Crosby, I don't really so much think about who he was, because honestly, I didn't know the guy. But I do think about what he was part of, which was quite a bit, starting with the Byrds, one of the first folk rock bands that would be responsible for laying the foundation for other bands such as R.E.M., The Smiths, Gin Blossom, Counting Crows, and of course Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers, among others.
The reason why, oh, I can say I have to let you go. And right away, after what you did, I can't stay on. And I'll probably feel a whole lot better when you're gone.
He was also a member of one of the most iconic vocal harmony groups within modern rock, with Crosby, Stills, and Nash, and of course Crosby, Stills, Nash, and Young.
Wordlessly watching, he waits by the window and wonders at the empty place inside.
And outside all of that, he was actually part of an era, part of a community, a point in time where a virtual nobody could actually interact with famous musicians at, say, a backyard barbecue at Mama Cass's house up in Laurel Canyon.
So now we find ourselves back where it all seemed to happen in those days, Laurel Canyon. And we're here on Woodrow Wilson Drive and coming up on what used to be the home of Mama Cass Elliot. By 1968, Crosby and Stills were both without bands. And they were spending a lot of time here at Mama Cass's house, jamming together. And one of the other frequent people they sang with here was John Sebastian of the Lovin' Spoonful.
And one more thing that you may or may not know is that he was actually part of a lot of hit songs, as he would collaborate as a background vocalist for a number of other artists.
Doctor, my eyes, tell me what is wrong. Was I unwise? Oh, Mexico, you sound so simple, I just got to go. Oh, think twice, 'cause it's another day for you and me in paradise. Oh, hold my hand. Want you to hold my hand. Hold my hand. I'll make you do a place right. 'Cause one of these days I'll be born and raised, and it's such a waste to grow up lonely.
Interviews with people who knew or worked with David Crosby used terms such as insufferable, arrogant, alcoholic, cocaine, heroin addict. And some of these habits he would change. Others, Who knows? But in the early 1990s, David Crosby would learn that he had a son, James Raymond, a son who he never knew about because he'd been given up for adoption when David Crosby was in his early 20s. In a later interview, Crosby would acknowledge that typically these type of reunions end in animosity. But in this case, he felt that James did a wonderful thing by giving him the chance to earn his way into his life. And they would do that through music, actually collaborating on a number of albums over the latter years of David Crosby's life. The most recent album, For Free, being released in 2021.
I just need to be close today. I need to be with you today. And I won't stay for long. I've got a place of my own, a little slice. There's a sliver of air between the water and the ice. It's where I...
Over the coming days, you're going to see a number of posts on David Crosby. Some will be flattering, others may not be. And as a fan of music, you're going to have a choice to make in terms of how you choose to categorize his legacy. As for me, it's going to be quite simple. David Crosby's voice, his music, his contribution is associated with a lot of very positive memories and emotions, and that's probably where they're going to stay. The reality is that artists in general can be difficult people to work with. We bring emotional baggage to the table. My wife will probably tell you there are times where I am insufferable. And maybe it's the tensions that are created among artists become the catalyst for the music that we fall in love with. So that's my 2 cents on David Crosby. What are your thoughts?